Jnanatimarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksurunmilitanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So welcome everyone to our study of Srimad Bhagavatam at the level of Bhakti Vaibhava. We're on the third canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, and this evening we're looking at chapter 23, entitled Devahuti's Lamentation. So chapter 22, we heard how Swayambhuva Manu had brought his daughter, Devahuti, to the ashram of Kardama Muni and presented her, or rather, he informed Kardama Muni that his daughter was ready for marriage, and since Kardama Muni was also considering marriage, Swayambhuva Manu thought it would be a good match, that the couple would make a good match. So Kardama Muni and Devahuti were put together. Swayambhuva Manu left his daughter there in the hermitage of Kardama Muni, and then Swayambhuva Manu went back to his capital, to Barishmati. And we heard about Swayambhuva Manu, about how he passed his life. Manu, remember, is one of the Mahajans. He's one of the 12 Mahajans. Swayambhu Narada Shambhu Komar Kapilo Manu. So Manu is one of the Mahajans. Swayambhuva Manu was the author of the Manu Samhita. So he's a very important devotee, very great devotee. And we heard about how he lived his life, which was a very long life, 71 Divya Yugas. And he passed his time hearing and chanting and worshipping the deity and hearing the glories of the Lord and writing and like this. So we're encouraged, we're inspired by hearing about the life of Swayambhuva Manu. You know, we have very short lives compared to Swayambhuva Manu. If we had to live a long life like Swayambhuva Manu, oh my goodness, it would really be a challenge. Our lives are very short. So we should make the best use of every moment. Don't waste time, right? That's a point Prabhupada often quoted Chanakya Pandit, that you can buy you can buy gold, but you can't buy time. So we want to make the best use of our time in Krishna consciousness. All right, so then chapter 23 then begins. We hear Maitreya speaking. Maitreya wants to know, after the departure of her parents, the chaste woman Devahuti could understand the desires of her husband, served him constantly with great love, as Bhavani, the wife of Lord Shiva, serves her husband. So Maitreya is not inquiring, Maitreya is telling us. He's speaking to Vidura and he's telling Vidura about what happened, how Devahuti's left there in the hermitage of Kardama Muni. And remember, she's the daughter of Emperor. Swayambhuva Manu's like the emperor of the world, and she was a princess, and now she's come to live in the hermitage with her husband. And so the example is given that she served her husband with great love, as Bhavani, the wife of Lord Shiva, served her husband. So this comparison is given. The example of Lord Shiva, he's a great husband, and Bhavani, she's a great wife. So young girls want a good husband, they're encouraged to worship Lord Shiva. And young men want to have a good wife, they can worship Bhavani and aspire to have a good wife. I noted some points in the purport here, text number 1, that the girls are not taught to select a husband who is very rich or very opulent for material sense gratification. Rather, if a girl is fortunate enough to get a husband as good as Lord Shiva in devotional service, then her life becomes perfect. So, of course, this is an important criteria to be established, and a young woman looking for a husband, they will naturally want to know, what kind of job do you have, how much income do you make, what kind of money do you have, and things like this. But here, Prabhupada is saying that in selecting a husband, it's not very important if the man is very rich, but what's important is the qualities. So young women should remember like that. They should be looking for the man suitably qualified. Husband should be a devotee of Krishna. Prabhupada would say, if the husband is a staunch devotee of Krishna, and the wife follows her husband, then when the husband goes back to Godhead, the wife will also go back to Godhead, because the wife will follow her husband. So this is the principle. So this first section of the chapter is relating very much to householder life. Text number 2, Vidura, O Vidura, Devahuti served her husband with intimacy and great respect, with control of the senses, with love, and with sweet words. These are very important qualities. And Prabhupada mentions here, in the purport, he talks about these things, especially with intimacy, and with great reverence, and sweet words. This is, of course, the mode of goodness, to speak with sweet words, words which are pleasing. Sometimes, sometimes we become very much passionate, and in a passionate mood, then our words can be very harsh, and they can be very cutting. So we have to be very conscious of how we speak to each other, and what kind of language we use. In the purport, Prabhupada notes, he said, a man's psychology and women's psychology are different. As constituted by bodily frame, a man always wants to be superior to his wife. And a woman, as bodily constituted, is naturally inferior to her husband. Well, this could be controversial. And certainly we saw in Srila Prabhupada's time, it was in the 1970s, there was a lot of agitation about women's liberation. And there were many reporters also coming to interview Prabhupada about this issue, about women's liberation, because Prabhupada had made some statements which were very controversial. For example, he said that the brain of the woman is, smaller than the size of the brain of the man. And so that was challenged. People came, they didn't like that. And Prabhupada in general was speaking about women, the role of a woman is to be dependent on her husband. But then you had the women's liberation, that, women are doing everything the man is doing. Why woman has to be dependent on the man? And so Prabhupada explained, he said, this women's liberation movement, he said, that movement was started by a bunch of men who wanted to cheat the ladies. They actually cheated the ladies, telling them, you're equal to the man. But how could it be? The woman has to become pregnant. The man doesn't become pregnant. It's the woman who conceives the child and who gives birth to the child. Men don't do that. So that's the difference between men and women. The woman is going to carry the child and deliver the child. And the man is the father of the child. But he doesn't have to give birth. So Prabhupada said, these men, they cheated the ladies by telling them that you're equal to the man. And then the result is women also go out to work. In China, they have a slogan. In Chinese it says, Nan Nu Ping Dang. Man and women are equal. That was very important in the past. Not so much important now, but in the past, they say they had the policy of only one child. So people naturally all wanted to have a man. They wanted to have a male child. They didn't want to have a female child. So they had to promote this slogan, men and women are equal. It doesn't matter if you have a man, or if you have a male child or a female child, doesn't matter, both equal. But even nowadays in China, the policy is when the girl gets married, the man has to give the dowry to the woman. Just the opposite as it is in India. I explained the other night. So there are differences in the psychology. Do you all agree? Ladies, what do you think, Apurva? Do you agree? Are you equal to man? Apurva Mataji? Not there, huh? Do we have some woman who can comment on this?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam, all blessed Srila Prabhupada. So, yeah. Of course it is not equal. we are different by bodies, by strength, everything is different in man and woman. And I totally understand where it has come from that women will be looking after household because they're more domestic by nature and men go outside to work. But as I was telling yesterday, that there is, in Kali Yuga now, because of the situation, so this equality thing, I believe, has come because of the exploitation which has been going on under the pretext that women will be staying at home and they are being exploited, and they are also having like divorces and all those cases are going on, and then they are left alone to fend for themselves. So this being independent has come up, and that is where I believe that this equality, because if we are left in the midway, when we can't do anything other than just become a maid servant in another person's house, it's better to have education and already have experience in working and all those things, so that in that scenario we can take care of our kids. That is where I feel that because of Kali Yuga, because of this exploitation and the mentality, this has come up of equality.
Okay, thank you, Mataji. Yes, it's definitely true that there is a difference in the psychology. As you say, women are much more domestic, and for them to take care of a home, they're much more tidy and neater and cleaner than most men generally. And they like to keep things organized. Certainly the presence of a woman in the home helps a lot to keep things steady and clean and tidy. The position of a woman, we do see modern times that women are all working, and it does make a difference to the home, because it means the children, they don't get a lot of time with their mother. And again, one of the things I mentioned also last night was the cooking, meals, eating at home. If every day all the meals are eaten outside, you purchase everything outside, on the street, or in the canteen, in the restaurant. It's not the same to be at home with the family. And then Prabhupada mentions also about the Vedic culture. He talks about the system that the woman should never call the man by name. Ramya Prabhu, does your wife apply that principle?
Generally, yes.
Generally, yes, yeah?
Yeah.
She will just say...
Something I heard was that in some countries, things have gotten so exaggerated that the women have to work, they have to take care of the house, they have to take care of the kids, and the man just goes out and drinks and gambles all day.
The man goes out, drinks and gambles all day.
Yeah.
And the woman is working.
Yes.
But she's working at home.
She's working and taking care of the home and taking care of the kids. She does everything.
Very special woman.
In Manipur, Maharaj.
Huh?
In Manipur it is like this.
In Manipur?
Yes, Maharaj. There is only a market called Ima market. Only women's market. The shopkeepers are also women and the buyers are also women. Men just drink and sit at home.
Oh my goodness. I'm surprised. That's different from the rest of India. Everywhere in India, markets is, everywhere it's men. India is very much a man's world. You don't see a lot of women in the markets and around, unlike other countries in Asia. Other countries in Asia, everywhere it's women doing everything. But in India, you see much more men. So I'm surprised Manipur is like that. So using for the husband to address, for the woman to address the husband by his name, it's the Vedic culture that she will simply call him my Prabhu. All right, we know Mother Sita never uttered the name of Lord Ram. And so that example is given. When we explained this principle to people from other Asian countries, it came as a shock to them. They were astounded. They thought, what? How can I talk to my husband? It was just unbelievable, the custom, the cult. But that, of course, that's the culture. So for people brought up in Hindu society, they generally have that culture, that the woman won't address the man by his name. She would simply say, my Prabhu, or that man. Okay, going ahead, text number 3. Working sanely and diligently she pleased her very powerful husband, giving up all lust, pride, envy, greed, sinful activities, and vanity. We can understand Devahuti is really a very saintly lady, although she's a young woman and she's from the royal family, but she is very, very saintly. Of course, her father's a Mahajan, and the father and his wife Satarup, they're both coming from the body of Lord Brahma, so they're very special beings. So their children are also not ordinary. So Prabhupada writes, the wife should not be proud of her parental position. She must always be submissive to the husband and must give up all vanity. As soon as the wife becomes proud of her parentage, her pride creates great misunderstanding between the husband and wife, and their nuptial life is ruined. So, Prabhupada had his own experience, of course, about family life. He lived in the Grihastha ashram for many years, so he understood the qualities, what is suitable qualities for a good wife. And then later in the purport, Prabhupada writes about 4 kinds of enemies at home. Quoting Chanakya Pandit, 4 kinds of enemies. First of all, he said, if the father is in debt, he's an enemy. If the mother has selected another husband in the presence of her grown-up children, then she's an enemy. And if a wife does not live well with her husband, but deals very roughly, then she is an enemy. And if the son is a fool, he is also an enemy. So Chanakya Pandit has described like this, different enemies. Even though you're at home, there can be enemies there. You have to be very careful. So very important for the woman that she must be chaste and faithful and give up pride and become a humble servant. The atmosphere in the home is very important. We could say that Kardama Muni and Devahuti, because they're in a hermitage, they're living in the forest beside the Bindu Sarova, so it's very much in the mode of goodness. And so it would be much easier, you could say it could be much more peaceful. You know, the way in which the world is built today, we have these skyscraper buildings, you have, condominiums and apartments everywhere, and people are all packed into these housing areas. It's not the mode of goodness. It's very much influenced by passion and ignorance. So the whole atmosphere of a concrete jungle, sometimes we would refer to these housing estates as concrete jungles, just big buildings, one after the other. If you go to Hong Kong, just so full of buildings everywhere, and all full of people, all packed together. And China also is like that. So many skyscrapers everywhere, people everywhere. It's a very passionate atmosphere. So the passion creates, being in the passion atmosphere will lead to distress. People become angry easily. So to live in a natural atmosphere, much easier to be in the mode of goodness. Of course, we have to understand it was Satya Yuga. So in Satya Yuga, people were of much better qualities. People were like Paramahamsas. Everyone followed the 4 regulative principles. People were very pious and religious. The 4 principles were all there completely. You know, cleanliness, mercy, austerity, truthfulness. Very different from the situation today. You go into the city, you go into New Delhi or Mumbai, and you will see liquor shops and lines of people lined up there purchasing liquor. I went one time to a Rath Yatra in Pondicherry, in South India. And I was thinking Pondicherry must be a very pious place for some reason, you know, because I knew Aurobindo had his ashram there, Auroville, so I thought it must be quite a spiritual place. But I was surprised to see liquor shops, and people were in the liquor shops drinking alcohol, and they would come out, when their chariot came past, they would come out, you know, drinking at one point and then coming out to see the chariot and offering some respect, and then go back to their drinking. So, Kali Yuga. So, Kardama Muni and Devahuti, they were living in the forest. They were saved from that kind of atmosphere. So she served her husband very nicely. He was a great man, of course. He was not, you know, if people may say, I want a wife like Devahuti. Okay, so you be a person like Kardama Muni. If you're like Kardama Muni, then you'll get a wife like Devahuti. But, you know, who is like Kardama Muni? Anyway, Devahuti is serving her great husband, and she became weak and thin due to her religious observances. And seeing her condition, Kardama Muni felt compassion for her, and he spoke to her in a voice choked with love. And so, Prabhupada writes in the purport, if the husband is a devotee and the wife is materialistic, there cannot be any peace in the home. The wife must see the tendencies of the husband and must be prepared to follow him. Now, that's all very well. What if the wife is a devotee and the husband is not a devotee? Should the wife also be prepared to follow the husband? What to do? Apurva.
No, because the Krishna consciousness is the goal of life. So if the husband is not a devotee, it's okay if she does not follow the husband.
It's all right to not follow the husband. Can the home still be peaceful? Would you marry someone who's not a devotee?
No.
Oh. You have to marry a devotee. Do you know any devotees, girls who are married to non-devotees?
Like I have heard from a female. So they had struggled a lot, but by Krishna's mercy, now they are doing okay. Like that. They have stopped doing their Krishna consciousness in between in meanwhile, because it's difficult because their in-laws were against her doing Krishna consciousness. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think we can always encourage if a girl married to a non-devotee husband, she can encourage her husband, but she cannot force her husband, and she can follow devotional service.
Okay. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes, Maharaji?
Maharaj, I would like to share here. So, of course, we don't have to follow if husband is not a devotee. So, but at the same time, like I would say that we should not disrespect to the husband. Instead, like we can bring them with love and with a sincere devotion to them. So by that, like slowly, by Krishna's mercy, by our prayers, and by somehow bring them in the devotee association. So that will definitely help them to change also. So instead of blindly following the husband who is not a devotee.
Okay. So tolerance, a lot of tolerance is required.
Yeah, tolerance and patience is required. I personally can say because I married, my Prabhu was a non-devotee when I married Prabhu, but now he is an initiated devotee.
Oh, really? Oh, wonderful. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, but no, Srila Prabhupada, his wife was not opposed, but she was not very interested, that was all. She didn't take an active interest. So Prabhupada, finally, eventually he left home. But of course his children were already pretty much grown up and they were there to take care of everything. So it wasn't a problem. Yes?
Can I share?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so Prabhupada also had, his sister was also married to a family who were non-veg eater, I believe, right?
Yes, right, yes.
Yes, so I probably, asked this in the class and this was answered to me that why it happened. So then it was said that so that she can slowly transform her husband. I don't know whether it has happened or not, but in our temple, I know a devotee. She does a lot of service. Her husband is a non-veg eater and comes to temple occasionally, but he strictly, stayed that way. He was so adamant that he doesn't want to, convert to vegetarian diet. And so she has to, as a wife, she has to cook for him separately. But she follows Ekadasi, she follows everything strictly vegetarian diet as we do.
Yes.
So it's a hard thing, but that's how, people have to adjust.
Yeah, there's one lady I know, and she has, our family are, they're grown up, a little bit grown up now. They're 20s, the children are in 20s, and out teenagers and so on. But the husband and the children, none of them are very vegetarian. So she has two kitchens. She has one kitchen for vegetarian, one kitchen for non-vegetarian. And so in this way, she has to deal with it because she became a devotee later in life. And so the others in the family didn't want to change. They didn't want to become vegetarian. But she's very convinced about it, and she cooks vegetarian. And for the other family, the family members, they have their own kitchen to cook non-vegetarian. Yeah, it's...
Yes, Maharaj. And I have, for some reason, I have seen in Kali Yuga now, whoever gets married, it is always incompatible partners. I've seen, like yesterday we had Griya Pravesh, and two of my, daughter's, classmates, parents I have invited. So when we are saying that come to ISKCON, why don't you come on Sunday program? This is so nice. And we had wonderful kirtan and lecture at our home. So they were saying, one couple was, husband was okay. He was ready to go to temple. Wife was like, grim face, like, oh, okay, we will think about it. Then another couple, exactly the opposite as you're saying. So I was thinking, this is such a mismatch, Krishna has given, if both of them agrees, immediately, they can come to the temple. But one of them is always, trying to obstruct the other person in their progress.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's common.
Yeah.
In countries outside India also, we have this, non-Hindu families particularly, the husbands are all meat eaters. Meat eating is so common everywhere in the world. Even in India today, of course, meat eating is common. It's rare to get people to be vegetarian. And even in Buddhist countries, the Buddhist people, even the monks eat meat. Even the Buddhist monks eat meat. So what to speak of the other people, everyone, meat eaters. And if you go to a Buddhist temple, you will see so many dogs there. And the dogs are there because the monks feed them. They feed the meat. They feed what they don't, because the monks go begging and they're given a lot of meat dishes and different things. And what they don't eat, they give to the dogs. So there's always so many dogs at the Buddhist temples. This is the degradation of Kali Yuga. So, yeah, it's certainly helpful that if the husband and wife can be carefully matched to have similar qualities. His Holiness Jayapataka Swami compiled a number of questions which he advises the couples to go through before the marriage. And they go through these questions and they can work out and they get to know each other and they can understand better about the marriage person they're planning to marry. By going through these different questions and thinking about how to answer these questions, then they can understand the nature of the person much better, and they can understand, will it actually work? Will I be able to live with this person? So this one way to try to face with this problem, trying to get compatibility. Better than astrology, you could say. Astrology is not so accurate. So Kardama Muni is now speaking. He's seeing the condition of his wife. And he said, I'm very pleased with you for your great devotion and your most excellent loving service. The body is so dear to embodied beings. I'm astonished you've neglected your own body to use it on my behalf. And Prabhupada writes in the purport, Devahuti was so faithful to her husband that not only did she serve him with great devotion, service and respect, but she did not even care for her own health. That is called selfless service. Can you think of some examples from the scriptures where we see this selfless service? There's one example which I recall from Krishna Lila. Lord Krishna was speaking with Sudama. Sudama had come to Dwarka. Do you remember? Anyone?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yes, go ahead. What happened?
His wife always said him, her husband, to go to Lord Krishna for getting some money, some wealth, because he is very wealthy. So, of course, Sudama was not willing to go, but on repeated request, he thought that it is a good person to meet him.
No, but they were having a conversation. Krishna and Sudama were talking about when they were in the Gurukula.
Yes, Maharaj.
Do you remember that?
Yes, Maharaj.
What happened when they were in the Gurukula?
And that in that Gurukula, once they went to bring some wood, and at that time, there was heavy rainfall, and they were stranded there, that jungle. In the morning, the Guru Sandipani Muni, he came and then took them back.
Yes, but when he came there and found them in the forest, he told them that you have suffered so much on my behalf.
Yes, Maharaj.
He congratulated them on their selfless service.
Yes, Maharaj.
They had gone there to collect the wood for the ashram, but they'd been left in the forest the whole night. So he said, you have suffered on my behalf. So Sandipani Muni appreciated their selfless service.
Yes, ma'am.
One more example, Maharaj.
Yes.
Of the gopis when Krishna, when it was said that Krishna is having headache to give the dust of the devotees. So when Narad Muni came, and I think Narad Muni, right?
Yes.
Then the gopis were the only one who actually selflessly said that, okay, even if we go to hell by giving our dust, we are still willing to do that for Krishna.
Oh, yes, very good. Thank you. Yes. Selfless service. Any other examples?
Bali Maharaj,
Yes, what happened?
like how he was known for giving charity, whatever. So when Vamandev came and then he asked for the 3 pieces of land, his spiritual master actually told him not to give because he's supreme personality of Godhead himself and he will take whatever you have. But still he continued on.
No.
Even he didn't care about that.
He disobeyed the order of his guru.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Because that time his guru was wrong.
Because his guru was wrong. His guru had initially told him, you should serve the Brahmins. You should give charity to the Brahmins. So the Brahmana had come and he's saying, don't give him.
Yeah.
So he saw contradictions. Okay, so selfless service.
Also, Maharaj Karna from Mahabharata.
Karna. What did he do?
He was in the early morning when he used to go for prayer. If any Brahmana asked for anything, he was willing to give in charity whatever they asked for. That's how he also gave his kavach.
Oh.
And because Lord Indra came in disguise of a Brahmana and asked for his kavach.
Oh, yes. And that's how Karna could be killed by Arjuna.
Also, Maharaj, in Ramayana we see the Lakshmana, Bharat, how they selflessly, even Hanuman, how they selflessly served Lord Rama in his mission. And we can also give examples of all our acharya, previous acharyas, up to Srila Prabhupada, who selflessly served for preaching Krishna consciousness.
Yes, very good. Certainly, Prabhupada gave a lot of selfless service, building temples, establishing the Krishna consciousness movement around the world. Nothing in his own name, everything in the service of Krishna. Okay.
And Maharaj, it had happened in life of Hare Krishna.
Yes?
It had happened in life of Draupadi, who had relentlessly sought all 5 husbands while they were put into exile, and she was cooking alone for the satisfaction of their husbands, and indirectly they all are the devotees of the Lord and they are serving the Lord, and indirectly Draupadi was also selflessly serving the Lord in that way.
Okay, you see Draupadi was serving her husbands faithfully. All right.
She didn't cook. She had Akshaya Patra.
Oh, she had her Akshaya Patra. Well, she has to cook to fill the Akshaya Patra, doesn't she?
Oh, it automatically appears, no? Isn't it, sir? before she eats the Akshay Patra?
It just appears. She doesn't have to cook.
That's what I knew. I thought.
Oh, I don't know. I don't.
If automatically it would have come, then when Durvasa came, they could have got the money. I mean, they could have got food. But it is cooked, and whatever is cooked, how many persons may take food, it will be not adjusted. But once Draupadi takes the food, then it will be adjusted. And thereafter, then it will be again, food will come again.
Okay, let's go ahead. Kardama Muni speaking to Devahuti, and he's so pleased with her. He said, I want to give you all the blessings which I have received. This is an important point. He said, Kardama Muni said, I have achieved the blessings of the Lord. And he said, now I want to give them to you. So what are these blessings of the Lord? It's mentioned here. It is stated here that the grace of the graces of the Lord are abhaya, free from fearfulness. So that's one blessing. And then free from the two kinds. Krishna. Free from the two kinds of material distress, hankering and lamenting. And the greatest blessing which we can receive, Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is divine mercy, the highest perfection, Bhagavat Prasad, divine mercy, Krishna Prem, love of Krishna. So these things are, Kardama Muni had already achieved them, and he's going to give them to Devahuti. He's so pleased with his wife, with her service, that he's going to give these blessings to her. No more, no reason to be fearful of anything, and no hankering or lamenting. Wouldn't it be so wonderful to have these blessings? We wouldn't have to be afraid of anything. Material life, we're always full of fear. We're always thinking, I'm going to lose. I'm always hankering and lamenting. So Kardama Muni is telling Devahuti, I want to give you these blessings. Kardama Muni tells his good wife, what is the use of enjoyment other than the Lord's grace? He's really a great saintly person, Kardama Muni. He's not at all interested in anything material. And so he's going to give that blessing to his own wife. In the purport of text number 8, Prabhupada writes, this grace of the Lord was achieved by Devahuti by the goodwill and satisfaction of her husband. She served her husband, who was a great devotee and saintly person, with great sincerity, love, affection, and service. And Kardama Muni was satisfied. He willingly gave love of God, and he recommended that she accept it and enjoy it, because he had already achieved it. So this is ideal family life, when the husband has love of God and he can give it to his wife. So Devahuti was very happy to hear this. Her husband speaking to her in this way. She's very pleased and she smiles.
I would like to ask him one question.
Okay.
So Maharaj, how does Kardama Muni, how can he give love of Krishna to his wife? Is it by association, his wife associating with Kardama Muni, it happens?
Yes, it can happen like that. just by association, just by being there, by blessings, by the divine blessings. Remember, he's a great yogi. So we say, just like when we worship Prabhupada, we say, from him ecstatic prema emanates, by him ignorance is destroyed. So ecstatic prema is emanating from the body of the pure devotees. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, people would just see him and they would be filled with love of God. That is the power of the pure devotees. They can give love of God just by seeing them. So Kadama Muni, he had achieved prema, and he's going to give it to his wife.
Yes, Maharaj. By his good desire, it happens.
He sees his wife is qualified to receive it. Those who have Krishna Prem, they will consider who is actually worthy to receive that Krishna Prem.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So Devahuti is very satisfied and she's smiling. Now she's going to speak, text number 10, and she's going to explain to her husband, I know you have achieved perfection and you are the master of all the infallible mystic powers because you are under the protection of Yoga Maya. But then she said, once you made a promise that our bodily union should now fulfill. Since children are a great quality for a chaste woman who has a glorious husband. So, Devahuti is expressing her desire. That it's very nice you want to give me love of God, but before you give me love of God, first of all, you should give me children. We should have children. So she reminds her husband, he promised like that. And Prabhupada in the purport, he explains, by bodily union of the husband and wife, their qualities are expanded. Children born of good parents are expansions of the parents' personal qualification. Both Kardama Muni and Devahuti were spiritually enlightened. Therefore, she desired from the beginning that first she be pregnant, and then she be empowered with the achievement of God's grace and love of God. Okay? For a woman, it is a great ambition to have a son of the same quality as a highly qualified husband. So since she had the opportunity to have Kardama Muni as her husband, she also desired to have a child by bodily union. So that is generally the way of family life. So Devahuti she's expressed her desire, and then she tells her husband, kindly make arrangements according to the scriptures. Make arrangements so that my skinny body, will be rendered fit for you. And please think of a suitable house for this purpose. So you can see the nature of family life. You're going to have a wife. You remember there's that story about the yogi who had a cat? Oh no, somebody gave the yogi a Bhagavad Gita, but then he found that there was a rat always coming and eating the Bhagavad Gita. So they brought the yogi a cat. And they thought the cat will keep the rats away. So the yogi took the cat. And so then the cat, he said, how to feed the cat? We need a cow. Okay, we'll give you a cow. So they brought a cow. Then who's going to take care of the cow? Okay, we'll get you a wife. And so he got a wife. And then after the wife came, the wife wants a house and she wants children. And so after some time they came back, the man had been a yogi, and then he came back, there was so many cows and there was house and children and everything. What happened? All because of the Bhagavad Gita. Somebody gave him the Bhagavad Gita. So that's the way of family life, you know, we get a bit, things expand. So a woman is called Stri, one who expands. So you get children, you need a house to have children, so many things. All right, so Devahuti is anxious. And Prabhupada explains here, he said, according to scripture, everything is described, everything is mentioned. How to decorate the home, and what dress the wife should wear, and how she should anoint her body with different oils and so on, just to increase the passion of the husband so that he will be more attracted to the wife. And so all of these things are described in scriptures, in Shastra. And of course her skinny body is not very attractive. She looks emaciated, so we have to improve her bodily condition. The woman has to look attractive to the husband. And then that way, Prabhupada explains, when the man is more attracted to the woman, there's more chance of a male child. If the woman is more attracted to the man, then it's likely you'll get a girl child. And so, this is all explained in scriptures. So Kardama Muni, he'd been living in the hermitage. He was very simple, completely in the mode of goodness. But now, in order to please his wife, there has to be some change. So it's described, Maitreya is describing, to please his wife, Kardama used his yoga powers. And he produced an aerial mansion that could travel at will. So this is the power of Kardama Muni. It's a wonderful aerial mansion which can travel at will. And that mansion, it's so amazing, it's described here. It's bedecked with all sorts of jewels. It was equipped with every form of furniture and wealth which tended to increase in the course of time. It said the castle, it was equipped with all paraphernalia for all seasons. It was pleasing. It was decorated with flags and festoons, all kinds of artistic work and colors and flowers and silk, linen, so many things. The palace was charming with beds, couches, fans and seats. And there were seven floors. It was like a multi-story building, 7 floors, a big place, just for one couple. But of course they were not alone. They brought with them all the maidservants. The women who were serving Devahuti, they also came there. And the floor was of emerald with coral diocese. The palace was beautiful. Entrance and its doors bedecked with diamonds, gold pinnacles crowned the domes, choicest rubies set in diamonds, canopies, gold, so opulent. And in the palace there were swans and pigeons, as well as artificial swans and pigeons. And the ones which were artificial they were so lifelike that they rose up again and again, just like live birds. You would think they were live, but they were not actually live. So there was the sound of these birds, and the yoga powers are beyond belief. And so when Devahuti saw the mansion which Kardama Muni had created, then she was she was shocked. It was quite a surprise to her. It said Devahuti looked at the gigantic, opulent palace with a displeased heart. She was displeased. She spent a long time in the hermitage, taking care of her body, and now he'd created this opulent place, and there's Devahuti, and she's thin and dirty, and her clothing is not very nice. So she can understand that she can't go into this mansion the way she is, because she's all dirty and skin is wrinkled and clothes are ragged. So there has to be some arrangement. So Kadama Muni tells his good wife, he said, "You look very much afraid." So he said, first take bath in the Bindu Sarova, and all the desires of a human being will be fulfilled. And then you come into the aeroplane. So this is the point, that Devahuti has to take bath in this Bindu Sarova, and within the Bindu Sarova there are many wonderful ladies like maidservants, and they're all there to take care of Devahuti, and they take care of her matted hair, and they cleanse her dirty body, and they give her beautiful clothes to wear and ornaments to decorate herself. So in this way, Devahuti was completely rejuvenated. It says, inside the lake there were 1,000 girls, all in the prime of youth, and fragrant like lotuses. And when Devahuti came in there, they told her, "We are all your maidservants. Tell us what we can do for you." And they were very respectful to Devahuti. And they took care of her so nicely, transformed her, and showed her her beauty. Her entire body was completely bathed and decorated. So there's detailed descriptions how she dressed herself and renovated her, rejuvenated herself. At the same time, she has natural beauty. Her countenance shone with beautiful teeth and charming eyebrows. Her eyes, distinguished by lovely moist corners, defeated the beauty of lotus buds. Her face was surrounded by dark, curling tresses. And so this was some of the power of Kardama Muni, by which he could bring Devahuti to enjoy traveling in the aerial mansion. So then we read descriptions of where they, well, text 37 describes that Kardama Muni thought she had regained her original beauty. She was looking very attractive, as she was when she had first come there. And now, after being bathed by all the Gandharva girls, she was ready to enjoy her marital relationship with her husband. And Prabhupada talks about the beauty of a woman is in her breasts, and then he quotes Shankaracharya, who warns that the transcendentalist who wants to be transcendentally realized should not be attracted by the raised breast of a woman, knowing that they're nothing but an interaction of fat and blood within the body. So Kardama Muni is surrounded by all these Gandharva girls. It's quite an unusual situation. He'd practiced brahmacharya life for 10,000 years, and then he gets married, and now he's surrounded with all these Gandharva girls as well. So, fortunately, he's trained as a brahmachari, so that's certainly to his advantage. He's in control of his mind and senses. He's not going to be bewildered. So we're told about the places they went to travel to. And they went to places like Mount Meru, where the demigods go. Mount Meru, where it's the fragrant breeze stimulated passion. And so people have that custom, if you go to countries, well, even in India, when Prabhupada was in Mumbai at one point, the devotees had been invited to a hill station. And Prabhupada thought it would be very nice. Prabhupada went to the hill station. Another time also, Prabhupada went up to Rishikesh, because in the summer, Rishikesh is a bit cooler than if you're in a place like Delhi or Vrindavan. It's very hot and dry, but go up to Rishikesh, it's cooler, you can enjoy there better. So similarly here, Kardama Muni and Devahuti, along with all the Gandharva ladies with the aerial mansion, they flew to Mount Meru and they enjoyed. Not just Mount Meru, there's mentioned many different places where they went to. And they were enjoying life there. Prabhupada writes, when one is surrounded by beautiful young girls, sex stimulation naturally becomes prominent. Kardama Muni was sexually stimulated, and he enjoyed his wife for many, many years in that part of Mount Meru. But his sex indulgence was praised by many, many siddhas, siddha beings who have attained perfection, because it was intended to produce good progeny for the good of universal affairs. So we should understand there's nothing mundane in these pastimes of Kardama Muni. It is all transcendental lila. And his activities are being praised by the siddhas because it's for the service of the Lord. The Lord Krishna himself says, Dharma varude bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshava. When the sex is according to religious principles, then Lord Krishna himself becomes that act. So here, the activities of Kardama Muni is being praised. And then we hear the other different places he went to. I don't know where they are, but certainly very wonderful. Manasa Sarova Lake, the gardens of Nandana, Pushpa Bhadrak, Chaitraratya, Vaishrambaka, Surasana. We don't know all these places. He traveled through the various planets. And he traveled to places even the demigods couldn't go. Just imagine the yoga powers of Kardama Muni. Prabhupada said, it is not possible to travel to any other planets because the laws of nature, even the demigods cannot move from one planet to another. But Kardama Muni, by his yoga power, could surpass the strength of the demigods and travel in space in all directions. So text 42 describes the power of Kardama Muni, that what is difficult to achieve for determined men who have taken refuge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's lotus feet. It's a rhetorical question. In other words, there's nothing difficult for someone who's taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. And Prabhupada describes, he said, Kardama Muni wasn't a conditioned being. He was already a liberated soul. He was above the demigods. Demigods are all conditioned. But he was, although Kardama was enjoying with his wife and many other women, he was above material conditional life. So we should understand the transcendental position of this man, Kardama Muni. And after they enjoyed for many years, then Kardama Muni returned to his own hermitage. They come back to his own hermitage, come back again. Why would he come back? Well, that's his home. He's happy there. He traveled, he enjoyed. You know, just like people like to go and travel. They go to visit America, they go to visit this place, that place. They always like to come back home. Prabhupada would say to the devotees, even as Prabhupada's traveling in America, he would say, let's go back home, back to Godhead. Let's go to Mayapur. Prabhupada would say like that. Prabhupada could understand Mayapur is back to Godhead. So people do like to, they go and travel for some time, but it's always so nice to come home, to come back to your base, some kind of base, you know, everyone has some kind of base. Like Indrajumna Maharaj. Indrajumna Maharaj just arrived here in Mayapur this afternoon, but his base is usually Vrindavan. So he travels a lot. He's very, very popular, very wonderful devotee, and he travels a lot, but he always likes to come back to his base there in Vrindavan. And similarly, Jayapataka Maharaj, he was traveling for some time. He went to the Middle East, he went to America, he was in Atlanta and New York, now he's back in Mayapur. He came back, of course, for his Vyasa Puja, and he's still here, fortunately. We're very happy. When Jayapataka Maharaj is here in Mayapur, then we feel this is really Mayapur. And when he's not here, we feel the difference. So Kardama Muni comes back to his hermitage, and his purpose in coming back is, of course, they're going to have the family. They want to have the family. Somehow, while they're traveling around the universe, they didn't get the children. So it's described in text 44. After coming back to his hermitage, he divided himself into 9 personalities, just to give pleasure to Devahuti, the daughter of Manu, who was eager for sex life. In that way, he enjoyed with her for many, many years, which passed just like a moment. And Prabhupada comments about the significance of Kardama Muni expanding himself into 9 forms. Right? Anybody remember that? Have you read this? Why did Kardama Muni expand himself into 9 forms?
Because Devahuti was so much sexually inclined just to satisfy her.
But a sexual appetite of woman is 9 times greater than that of a man.
Yes, that's said there. Prabhupada, well, it's said there in the scriptures. It's a scriptural statement, not just Prabhupada said it, it's from the scriptures. It said the woman's lust is considered to be 9 times greater than the man. And so Kardama Muni expanded himself 9 times. And in this way, he will be able to fully, we hope, he will be able to satisfy his good wife.
There is a question here that what general principle can we draw from this verse?
Huh?
What general principle can we draw from this?
Well, what general principle do you think you can draw from this verse? I don't, we already explained about the significance of the 9 expansions.
Yeah. There is a question like that.
Prabhupada would say, women are like fire and men are like butter, right? So we should put on the forehead of the brahmacharis, keep in a cool place, store in a cool place. In other words, keep the brahmacharis away from the women. That's a principle. Separation.
Also, yeah. The point was that as a yogi, one can expand only up to 9 of bodies or forms. But each body doesn't separately work. They're not independent. But also compared to Krishna, who had 16,108 wives, and Krishna was there in each house doing different activities. So that comparison between a mystic yogi and Krishna, the supreme mystic yogi.
Okay, yes. And Prabhupada also mentions about Subari Muni. Subari Muni, he expanded himself 8 times. And Subari Muni also had a number of wives. Kardama only had 1 wife, but Subari Muni, how many wives did he have?
50.
50, yes.
Yes,
But he could only expand himself 8 times. All right. So then it's mentioned with his expansion. I don't know what happened. It says in 44 they came back to his hermitage, but then in 45 it talks about in the aerial mansion. In that aerial mansion, Devahuti, in the company of her handsome husband, situated on an excellent bed that increased sexual desires, could not realize how much time was passing. So that's the nature of materialistic life, sense gratification. When people are engaged in sense gratification, they don't notice how time is passing. And that's why it's so difficult for people to give up sense gratification. Because the time passes so easily for them. But when they have to be Krishna conscious, then it's quite a challenge for them. Time seems to pass quite slowly. Reading Srimad Bhagavatam, reading Bhagavad Gita, it seems to be much more difficult, much more of a challenge. And we see in economically prosperous conditions, it's very difficult for people to be Krishna conscious. Because they're used to the time passing quickly. They're used to they don't notice the time passing. But when they have to stop the acts of sense gratification, And when they have to sit and chant, or when they have to sit and hear, very difficult for them. You will see people, when they sit in class, they're always looking at the time. What time is it now? How long? When will they stop? When will class be over? Or when we're in the japa period, we're watching the clock. What's the time now? When's the japa period going to be over? We can't wait for time to pass when we're doing this spiritual activity. But when people are having sense gratification, they can go on for hours, years together. They never want it to end. That's the power of sense gratification. People are thinking that they can go on forever enjoying material sense gratification. But of course, it's very temporary. You cannot. The bubble bursts. The illusion of material happiness does not remain forever. The bubble bursts and they have to come back to the reality. All right. So it mentions here, text 46, they said, 100 autumns passed like a brief span of time. 100 autumns in the Satya Yuga, well, they live, you live a life of 100,000 years, 100 autumns is not a very long time. 100. We heard Kodama Muni did meditation for 10,000 years. And so 100 autumns, we could say, well, it's not so long. But they were having sense gratification. So then 47 comes back, we're back in the hermitage, and it seems like Kodama Muni, he divided himself into 9 forms, and he impregnated Devahuti with 9 discharges of semen. And in this way they got 9 daughters. And then 48, text 48 describes, immediately afterwards, on the same day, Devahuti gave birth to 9 female children, all charming in every limb and fragrant with the scent of the red lotus flower. Well, I think you could imagine if birth could be like that today, how many women would want to have children? It would be so much easier for them, right? They could give birth immediately on the same day. You don't have to suffer 9 months of pregnancy and wait for the child to come out. And Devahuti gave birth in this way. And all the children, we can understand they must have grown immediately also, maybe, because they're all charming, very beautiful. So then,
Maharaj?
yes?
It happened. Does it happen because of mystic power of Karta Muni, or is it the system? I don't know. How many planets it was on Earth? How did they same day were born the children?
How were they born? We're not given any details. I don't want to speculate on that. Anybody like to respond? Anybody know? Immediately, on the same day, gave birth, 9 female children. Birth without pregnancy. Oh, that's something, birth without pregnancy. Yeah, that's the demigods. Demigods can give birth without pregnancy.
Same day, Maharaj?
Well, I don't know about, yeah, I guess that's what it means. You're going to give birth without... Okay.
Whereas in case of Urvasi, that Pururava, she married Pururava, but she had to wait for 1 year. Then she delivered that child.
Okay.
And also in case of this, some other case, I forgot. But they have to take some time.
What about when Kunti gave birth? Kunti gave birth to her sons by the demigods.
Yes, ma'am.
She could give birth immediately.
Immediately, yes, ma'am. Yes. And also this Satyavati and Parasara, the Vyasadeva came.
Yes.
Krishna the fan Vyasa. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Maharaj, the situation here in Kardamuni's case is quite different than giving birth by demigods. Here, Kardamuni, by discharge of his remains into the womb of Devahuti, begot children, 9 girls. So it is quite different than birth given through demigods. Right?
The demigods don't give birth by discharging semen? How do they give birth?
No, that is not by Siemens, that is by their potency is what I mean to understand.
Well, demigods also, we hear about Indra, how he's lusty to enjoy sex. So the sex pleasure is there in the demigods also. And that's
There is also a story that the spiritual master of demigods, that is Brahaspati, and he tried to have sex with the wife of his brother, that is, and his wife was having a child. But that child from that womb, he said that you don't put semen in this womb. Like that, there's a story like that. And Bharadwaj came from that.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Yes.
Also, Maharaj, I heard about Srila Prabhupada mentioning that demigods also do enjoy a lot, but the pregnancy doesn't occur as it happens in the material world. Like, they even after enjoying for hundreds of years, once a woman gets pregnant in the demigod planet.
I know when Bhakti Charuswami, when he was first initiated by Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada gave him initiation quite quickly, gave him both initiations at the one time. I think Tamal Krishna Maharaj said to Bhakti Charuswami, he said, "You're a demigod, Bhakti Charu, because you took birth without pregnancy." Because, Bhakti Charu, he hadn't been a devotee very long and he took his initiations quickly. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he compared it to a demigod. The demigods, they give birth without pregnancy. Okay? So Kardama Muni, text 49, her husband's about to leave. And so Devahuti responds, at first she smiled externally, but at heart she was agitated and distressed. So Kardama Muni, because he had 9 daughters, so I think, well, I did my duty, it's time to go. And Prabhupada writes in the purport, the example of Kardama Muni should be understood very clearly. A person whose main concern is Krishna consciousness, even if he is entrapped in household life, should always be ready to leave household enticement as soon as possible. So, how could that be wrongly understood? How could people take this the wrong way? Any comments? Anyone? I can give you some examples. There was one man came to Prabhupada, and he was I think he was a Sindhi man actually, and he came to Prabhupada and he said, Swamiji, I want to take sannyas. And so Prabhupada looked up and looked at him and said, yes, why? And then the man said, I have a wife and 4 children at home. It's terrible. I want to leave immediately. And so, Prabhupada didn't take the man very seriously. He spoke more to the man and he understood the man's nature, and he understood the man was not really serious and was not ready or qualified for sannyas. But Gaur Govinda Swami, he came there to Prabhupada in Vrindavan, and he came to Prabhupada and met Prabhupada, and he also wanted to take sannyas. And Prabhupada spoke to him, and when he spoke to him, he understood this man is actually qualified to take sannyas. He understood actually Gaur Govinda had already left home, and he was traveling, and he was looking somewhere where he could properly devote himself. And when he met Prabhupada's movement in Vrindavan and he met Prabhupada, he understood this is really what he was looking for. And Prabhupada talked to him, and Prabhupada understood this man was very qualified, that his whole life he'd been a devotee, he was very religious-minded, he was also educated, he'd been a school teacher, and he'd been through householder life, and he'd left the home. He was not attached to the home, he'd gone out of the home, and he was looking where he could devote himself. So Prabhupada engaged him in Krishna consciousness. But the man who came there, who had the wife and 4 kids, he was not like that at all. He'd been drinking and doing different things. He was not so pious and religious. He was not like Gaur Govinda Maharaj. So, an enticement to leave home, it's not that Prabhupada is encouraging people to be irresponsible. If you have a responsibility, we should recognize that and keep that responsibility. Just like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he took sannyas at the age of 24, and he had a young wife with no children and an elderly mother. But he left home. He took sannyas for the higher purpose. Any comments? Prabhupada said he should be ready to leave household enticement as soon as possible.
There is also another example that Sridhar Swami. Sridhar Swami, he wanted to take sannyas, but at that time his wife gave birth to a child and she died. And Sridhar Swami was thinking how he can take sannyas. But at the time, Prabhupada has spoken like this. At the time he saw the ants are in the line, and one lizard was took birth and he got his food. So he understood that the Lord has arranged for everyone. So he took sannyas, like that I have heard.
When you say Sridhar Swami, you're talking about the original commentator of Bhagavatam.
Yes, Maharaj. Yes, Maharaj.
Okay.
It is also said by Prabhupada Maharaj in one of his.
Yes, I'd heard the example before. Yes, good.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
I have heard that how if someone is taking sannyas, and he should make sure there's someone to take care of his wife and children like that. Like if the wife has an elder son, then he can take care of like that. I have heard.
Oh,
There
yes.
should be
Absolutely. Yeah, it's correct. Yes. The wife should be taken care of. There should be, just like in ISKCON society, you know, if somebody wants to take sannyas, they will examine, you know, did you have a wife? Do you have any wife or children? Is there arrangement there to take care of her? So that's required. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
I want to ask one question. We see in the past Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas at such a young age when his wife was also young and he had a mother. So how we can see as a good example, like they were left behind and Mahaprabhu took sannyas?
Yes. The point is, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Lord, and he has to fulfill the mission of the Lord. And he cannot fulfill the Lord's mission simply by staying at home. He has to get out from the house. He has to leave the home. There were a number of factors which led to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taking sannyas. One problem was that the students were going to attack him. When he was in the ecstasy of separation from Krishna, he was in the mood of the gopis, feeling at that point he was chanting the names of the gopis, and one student came to him and said, "You should chant the name of Krishna. Why don't you chant the name of the Lord? Why are you chanting the names of the gopis?" So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in he was in Man, feeling some anger towards Krishna. And when the student came and instructed him like that, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became angry at him and chased him. So the boy ran away, and the boy ran away and told all the other students that this Nimai Pandit has become very proud. He was going to beat me. So all the students were going to come and beat Nimai Pandit. So Lord Chaitanya thought about this. He thought that, I've come here to deliver the world. If they're all going to come and attack me, then they'll all go to hell. And instead of delivering them, I'll be responsible for taking them to hell. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu considered the best thing he could do would be to renounce the world and to take sannyas. And then they will respect him. So that was one reason why he took sannyas. And you're worried that who's going to take care of his wife and mother? That was all arranged. There are many, many devotees there, and everyone was willing, everyone take care of Mother Sachi and Vishnu Priya. That's not a big problem. None of them were working, they were all brahmanas. They're all brahmanas, and Srivas Pandit's family, and Advaita Acharya, all these people. And so they all lived, provided by the grace of the Lord. There were people like Raghunath's father, Haranya and Govardhan Majumba, and they were very, very wealthy. And they were giving a lot of charity. They were maintaining all the brahmanas of Bengal. And so the brahmanas lived without much anxiety. So Mother Sachi and Vishnu Priya, they managed all right.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I have one more question. You gave one more example of how I forgot the name, the one acharya who actually left his house. Even though there was no one to take care of, he left because of a higher purpose. So in other case, on the contrary, we should not leave if there is no one to take care of. We should make sure there is someone. So how to understand this? How to understand what, both are actually opposite. So how we can understand that, how someone can make decision what to do or not to do, what is right, what is not right.
Well, after Lord Chaitanya took sannyas, then it was arranged to bring Mother Sachi to Shantipur. And she met Lord Chaitanya. She saw her son as a sannyasi for the first time. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said to her, you know, he said, you know, I have taken sannyas in a very impulsive manner. He said, I will give it up and I will come home with you. So Mother Sachi said, oh no, please don't do that. That will be worse. Because if you give up your sannyas and come home with me, then there will be, that's disgraceful. So she said, I don't want that to happen. So now you've taken sannyas, you please keep your sannyas. But she requested him to go to Jagannath Puri rather than to Vrindavan. So Lord Chaitanya was willing to give up the sannyas if his mother wanted that. But mother understood. She said, no, you've taken sannyas, now you have to keep it. Yeah.
In other cases, like how regarding Sridhar Swami and Muracharya, they also take sannyas, but like for higher purpose. So how we can understand that?
Well, yes, the higher purpose is to preach the glories of the Lord. Because instead, if you stay at home, how many people can you benefit? How many people are going to get your mercy if you stay at home? How many are you going to deliver? Not very many. But if you go out from the home and you go out and actually preach, and you know, just like Sridhar Swami and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you know, they delivered the whole world. They did so much preaching, writing their commentaries on the, Sridhar Swami wrote the original commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu established the Yuga Dharma, the Sankirtan movement. You know, you can't do these things. Just like Srila Prabhupada gave sannyas, it was 1976, and Prabhupada awarded sannyas. I think there were 7 devotees taking sannyas. So one of Prabhupada's friends had come there, an elderly man, Bengali man, a friend of Prabhupada, and he said to Prabhupada, he said, you know, he said, these men taking sannyas, they all look very young. And Prabhupada said, because at that time in ISKCON, you could take sannyas when you were a young man. And Prabhupada would award sannyas to people in mid-20s and early 30s. And so Prabhupada said, he said to the man, he said, if we wait until they're old men, what can they do? If you take sannyas in your old age, what can you do? You can't do very much in old age, but when they're young, they can do a lot. You have to understand what is the purpose of sannyas. It's preaching and propaganda work and going out and distributing Krishna consciousness to areas where there's no Krishna consciousness. It's creating the field of preaching. But if you stay at home, you can't do that.
Thank you.
So this is, of course, Kadama Muni, his sannyas is a little different. It's Satya Yuga. He's not really going to be going preaching, but in the Satya Yuga, the sannyas, purpose of sannyas, Vedic sannyas is austerity. Doing more austerities and being away from the world, renouncing everything, wearing tree bark for clothes and so on. Okay, so then takes 50. We hear about Devahuti seeing her husband's going to leave, and she stood and scratched the ground with her foot. Scratched the ground with her foot is something which women have a habit to do when they're disturbed. And the purport Prabhupada describes how the gopis did this. When Krishna told them, when they came to Krishna in the forest, And Krishna told him, what are you doing here? You should go home. Then the gopis also scratched the ground with their feet. Their minds were disturbed. And so similarly, Devahuti, she's also similar reaction, scratching the ground with her feet and feeling that, what's the point? What am I doing here? What's he doing? What's my husband doing? Why is he going to leave me? Anyway, she says to her husband, you have fulfilled all the promises you gave me, yet because I am your surrendered soul, you should give me fearlessness too. So this was something which he was supposed to give her, fearlessness. Prabhupada writes at the end of the verse, he says, Devahuti is saying, you have given me all sorts of material comforts by your yoga powers, and now you're prepared to go away. You must give me your last award so that I may get free from material conditioned life. To get free of material, that is the real mercy. And she said, who will give me solace after you go as a sannyasi? I said, our daughters, they're going to find their husbands. They will go away to their homes. The daughters will go away. But who will give me comfort after you go as a sannyasi? So this is Devahuti's argument. In other words, she wants a son. There should be a son. But they only had daughters, 9 daughters. They're all going to leave her. Nowadays, even if you have a son, the son would also leave home. But traditionally, in the Vedic culture, the son will take care of the mother. And then Devahuti continues that we wasted so much of our time in sense gratification, neglecting to cultivate knowledge of the Supreme Lord. We enjoyed sense gratification. We traveled all over the universe. These boons have come by your grace, but they have all been for sense gratification. Now there must be something for my spiritual advancement. So Devahuti is showing her intelligence. She's thinking, okay, we had our sense gratification, now spiritual advancement. What about my spiritual advancement? So certainly she had become attached to her husband, and she knows her husband's going to leave her. But at the same time, she wants that she should not be in any anxiety. There shouldn't be any fear for her. And Prabhupada in the purport says, generally all women desire material enjoyment. So they are called less intelligent because they are mostly prone to material enjoyment. Devahuti laments because her husband had given her the best kind of material enjoyment. But she did not know that he was so advanced in spiritual realization. Now she knows he's spiritually advanced because he's ready to go away. He's ready to leave. He's given it all up. But he'd been leading his wife, they'd been enjoying together, and so she's just a little bewildered about the whole thing. Because when you're enjoying, you don't think about spiritual practice. But Kardama Muni, although he was enjoying, he didn't forget about spiritual practice. And he came back to the hermitage, he put his wife there, and he's ready to go. So she's a little bewildered. What about me? What about my position?
So Maharaj, Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Uh-huh.
Maharaj, actually it is going contrary to our discussion as you made earlier. That means without discharging the responsibility of the family, that means Kardamani had 9 daughters. 9 daughters, and they were squarely dependent upon the guidance of the father. And Kardamani, for his spiritual pursuits, spiritual realizations, he is leaving the family by leaving aside his family members, means 9 daughters. Is it not an understanding that goes contrary to spiritual realization?
Well, the 9 daughters are all going to get married immediately. There's already arrangement for that. The 9 sons of Brahma are going to come. They'll take them for their wives. It's not a problem.
Okay, Maharaj.
And then text 55, it's a similar verse which we'll hear in chapter 25. 55, talking about association. It's the cause of bondage, but some type of association can give liberation. One type of association may be bondage, another type of association with a saintly person can be the cause of liberation. That's a common point which comes up. Anyway, Devahuti says to her husband, finally, she said, she feels she has been cheated by him. She's been cheated by Krishna, by the illusory energy of Krishna. Because in spite of having attained association with a good husband, which gives liberation from material bondage, I did not seek such liberation. So even though we don't seek such liberation, you get it anyway. That's the nature of Krishna. And we see different demons, like Putana got liberated. She didn't seek it, but she got liberated. Pandraka got liberated. Kamsa got liberated by the mercy of Krishna. Even though they weren't looking for liberation, they got it anyway. So Devahuti, she's also been cheated in a way. She didn't really want liberation, but she's getting it, and she's going to get it. So we will hear in the next chapter, chapter 24, we'll hear about the renunciation of Kardama Muni, and we'll hear also the appearance of Lord Kapila Dev. Lord Kapila Dev comes as his son. We'll hear that the 9 daughters are taken away to be married, and the son, Lord Kapila, appears from the semen of Kardama. He comes as a child of Devahuti. And then Kardama can go, he leaves Devahuti with her son. So that will be the chapter 24, which we will have on Saturday, which will be the final class of this unit. Any questions?
Maharaj. I had a question from the text 42. So in that it is written that about Kardamuni, although he was enjoying with his wife and many other women, he was above material condition of life. I didn't understand, like one should not should not have any connection with other women, right? So why it is written that he was enjoying with wife and many other women?
Well, remember, he's traveling in an airplane with all of these ladies, and as far as we know, he's the only male. He's traveling there with all of these ladies, which they were created like maidservants for his wife. So it's customary in such a situation we know great kings and so on, they would have many, they would enjoy, just like Vidura. Vidura was conceived by Vyasadeva in the womb of a Sudra lady who lived in the palace.
Yeah.
And so Kardama Muni is there with all of these different ladies, and they will approach him, and sometimes he may be obliged to be put into compromising situations with them.
Okay.
Although he doesn't actually desire that sense gratification, but somehow it's just arranged like that. The arrangement of the Supreme Lord. But even though he's put into that situation, he doesn't lose his God consciousness, and he remembers his vow to renounce. But first of all, he's taking care of his wife. He brought her back to his hermitage, and he's arranging everything for her. He will arrange, the mansion is there for her, and so many maidservants are there to take care of her. So everything is provided for her.
Maharaj,
Yes?
in text number 55, translation, association for sense gratification is certainly the path of bondage, but the same type of association performed with the saintly person. So Maharaj, my doubt was that association for sense gratification is path of bondage, but the same type of association means, does this mean that association for sense gratification with the saintly person, or does it mean other things like hearing from a saintly person?
Well, it's the same. Hearing from a saintly person or associating physically with them. It's not different. Definitely you have to hear. We associate with saintly person by the ears, by hearing their instructions. So you have to hear from the saintly person. One devotee asked Prabhupada, what's better, read the books or have the association with the person? He said, Prabhupada, better you hear from the person directly. He said, because if you hear from the person directly, then he will pull your ear. He won't let you sleep. He won't let you just doze. When we read, we can read so casually, but when he's actually there, if you're actually sitting in front of someone directly, it's much more powerful.
Yes, Maharaj. But Maharaj, my doubt was that, like Devahuti associated with Kardama Muni for sense gratification. So it is a cause of bondage. But this same sense gratification done with a saintly person, like Kardama Muni, led to liberation. Does this mean, the shloka means like this? That is it talking about the physical sense gratification with Kardama Muni or hearing from a saintly person?
I haven't quite got your point, what you're trying to say. Hearing?
There's nothing about hearing written, Maharaj, in this verse. Association for sense gratification is certainly the path of bondage, but the same type of association...
Well, you have to understand that Kardama Muni and Devahuti, certainly they were having sense gratification together. There was a lot of gross sense gratification. They were enjoying sexual relationships together, but there was also a lot of spiritual benefit there, because Kardama Muni is a great saintly person. So the places they went to were very special places where demigods and so on were going. And remember, he's a great yogi, he's a great saintly person. It's not going to be mundane. There must have been a very pure spiritual atmosphere. He would be reciting prayers and mantras. He would be speaking of the glories of the Lord. Remember, he was an accomplished yogi. The Lord had personally come and told him that his wife is going to come in a few days. He'd spoken to the Supreme Lord himself.
Yes, Maharaj.
So he's a very powerful personality. It's not going to be mundane. The relationship would be very, there would be a lot of prayers and recitation of Vedic mantras and hymns and maybe even, of course, I don't know if they had scriptures to read, but he would recite. He could, probably he knew everything by heart, and he would speak. So that kind of association is very powerful.
Maharaj, can I say something in this matter?
Yes, okay.
That those persons who have associated with Srila Prabhupada Maharaj, how they have been benefited. And if they would have associated with other persons, what would have been?
But Prabhupada's wife didn't get benefit.
Well, it's up to every individual how much you take advantage of the association. Prabhupada gives the example, the bug may sit on the body of the king, but his business is just to bite. And so in text 55 I noted Prabhupada said, association with great saintly persons also results in liberation, just as when one goes towards fire, knowingly or unknowingly, the fire will make one warm. Devahuti expressed her gratefulness, for although she wanted to associate with Kardama Muni only for sense gratification, because he was spiritually great, she was sure to be liberated by his association, by his benediction. So your point is explained there at the end of the purport. Devahuti wasn't thinking about getting liberated, but somehow she did have an interest to get that kind of association, because she was a princess and she'd heard from Narada Muni, she'd heard about him, that this man is very austere, very renounced, didn't have any wealth, didn't have any opulence materially, but she was attracted. And so she was also a pure soul. She also, although it seems like she wanted sense gratification, she also wanted spiritual progress, spiritual advancement. And she realizes it. When her husband's getting ready to go, she realizes she's been cheated. And she starts to think about it. Just a minute, I should have taken advantage. I should have taken more advantage of my great husband. And then she understands the need for a son. Okay?
Yes, Maharaj.
I have a question. I'm filling a question that after study of the entire subject in detailed manner, Maharaj,
Sorry?
I have a doubt. I have a very preliminary doubt in my mind. That is what we are every time we are saying that Kardama Muni was a yogi, a mystic yogi. But Srila Prabhupada categorically distinguishes in the Krishna conscious syllabus that yogis do not fall in the class of devotees, pure devotees. Karmi, Jnani, Yogi, devotees are quite different. So maybe it in the age of Satyayug, but he had not attained the pure devotional service, devotional achievement. That means he was not never quoted or cited as pure devotee of the Lord. But he was a mystic yogi. Could you please clarify?
Well, the Lord did come and speak to him. He must have had some great spiritual power, because the Lord personally came to him and told him that he'd arranged for a suitable wife for him. So the Lord definitely had a plan for Kardama Muni. You may say he was not a devotee. Well, he must have been some kind of devotee. The Lord didn't come and speak to just anybody. His yoga powers are the grace of the Lord. So we cannot say he's not a devotee. Yeah, he's a yogi, he's a mystic yogi, he has yoga power. He's also an Astanga yogi. And Astanga yoga also leads to bhakti. Definitely has some bhakti. And he's much greater than the demigods. The demigods are way below him. So just understand the greatness of Kardama Muni. And we will hear in the final chapter about the renunciation of Kardama Muni. He's also very renounced. Although he has his yoga powers, he doesn't use them for sense gratification. He gives it all up. Right?
Okay, Maharaj, thank you.
Okay, so any other question, comment? Okay, then we will meet next week, next Saturday. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki.
Jai.
Maharaj ki.
Srila Prabhupada ki. Hare Krishna.